Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed. Today we had agreed that we would continue discussing the libertarian proposal for a basic income guarantee, but we will postpone that for 1 week. And so instead today we have decided to share this topic that is so part of our own doing and what we are sharing as well here, which is online activism, the age of online activism. So we will be discussing a bit of the pros, the cons, the considerations, and also some solutions that we see to make it a more cohesive movement that gets to real change. So to remind you, the viewer, you can participate with questions and comments throughout the Hangout, which will be approximately 40 minutes, so make sure that you get your question throughout that time frame. And also, if you want to participate in another Hangout on this topic, you can also let us know through the comment section. So today we have Hilda Ratz from Slovenia. Hi, Hilda.
Hello.
And we had Sandy as well, but she's here. Hello, Sandy.
Hi. So it's happening again. So that's too bad. I'm gonna take my computer in again. Like we thought it was Skype, so I guess it isn't.
Yes, so there's no problem. She's having computer problems, so she'll try and stay in on the Hangout. So let's begin with our topic, because what we have witnessed from the use of the internet, it has been like this revolution in terms of how we are now connected more and more at a global level through social media mostly. So what one would expect is that, well, now the political voice will be extended to everyone that has internet, for example. And so there's been terms like online activism, digital activism, or online politics, for example. So from your perspective, has the tools or social media in itself, or the internet in itself, become effective in creating this type of political platforms? What is the reality of it at the moment? What's your perspective on this, Hilda?
Yeah, sorry. The effectiveness of the internet has not quite yet been established fully, I would say. There has been a lot of online activism going on, yes. There's a lot of data out there. There's a lot of people being, I forget the word. Sorry, just a moment. A lot of people seize the data. A lot of people is exposed to realities of our world that they haven't necessarily considered or seen before. So in that sense, I would say that people's awareness about problems in the world has definitely risen. From a practical example would be, I know a person who was completely disregarding, for instance, chemtrails, which are quite visible over the Slovenian sky, at least. The sky is full of it, but people have been dismissing it as a conspiracy theory. So now that this has become a very hot topic on Facebook, so to speak, people are starting to actually see it and actually become worried about it. So I would say definitely there has been a rise in awareness about that. As far as practical outflow into the physical in terms of politics goes, actually I would also say that there has been an impact, since in Slovenia we actually have people in the parliament now who kind of flocked and came together through Facebook, through online participation. We had big, massive demonstrations in Slovenia when people were really fed up in the end of 2012 and the beginning of 2013. And they actually came together and they connected via Facebook, and they took the thing so far that they actually got into parliament. They have only 6 seats out of 90, but you know, it's a start. So I would say that there's definitely an impact.
And also that is here to consider is that the internet as a massive or mainstream thing has been here from the 2097, around there. So it will be quite difficult to get things moving so fast in 10 years, 15 years. I mean, we are barely learning how to make even this kind of political or social awareness used to social media, which is also an outflow of our own participation as human beings in it. So, Hilda, what would you say about also, you become more aware of the abuse that goes on in the world in terms of corporations, environmental abuse, our own disregard as human beings, or some institutional abuse. What's your perspective in terms of how this type of online activism creates awareness? What has happened with you or people around you? Has it worked or not?
Well, for me, I must say that there has definitely been an impact. I mean, I've learned a lot of things that I previously was completely oblivious to. And from some point on, I also started sharing these realizations, this information. And I have observed that many people are still resisting these realities, so to speak. But also, at the same time, there's a lot of people who are aware of these points, and there's definitely a conversation going on about it.
Yeah,
so I would say overall that
I would also like to point out that in between this, there is this idea that, well, only watching the picture on Facebook or signing the petition won't do a thing. What has been your experience around this in relation to, yes, very common signing petition or asking you to place a like on Facebook on this or that topic? What's your perspective on this? Does it work? Does it need work?
I wouldn't really say it works. I mean, this is like a big trap, I would say, where people get the feeling that they're actually doing something, that they're having an impact, by clicking a mouse, which is not that simple in reality. And this kind of activism hasn't really caused anything to change, really. I have the example of my friend who was big on legalizing marijuana, and he was trying to get people to sign some document actually, so that the government would then look at it and perhaps maybe consider it, and nothing good came out of that. And the same, and even more crucial actually point, the same went on with invalid people, disabled people, who were also trying to get some benefits from the state, and they were doing these petitions. They even transferred that into the physical, where people had to go sign a paper to their city hall, and they even gathered the necessary 5,000 signatures, which is a lot for a small country like Slovenia of 2 million. And again, nothing happened. So this is just, sand into the eyes, I would say.
Yeah,
it's like
what I would say here also is that when we look only at these various outflows or consequences, such as maybe saving an entire forest or supporting the people with a specific disease or else, we tend to get a myopic view, meaning a reduced view in terms of looking at the problem very close from very close and not really looking at the holistic aspect of it, which is there is an internal and structural problem that is going on, which is then consequently creating all of these bits of problems in all aspects of our society. So I would also say that it would be probably more effective, which is our point here, to also suggest how to make best use of online activism, to direct these problems in a political manner, and so eventually support the formation of new political parties, which would be most ideal from my perspective. So what were you going to say before that?
You know, I can't really remember, so
So let's move on, because there's also, along with this, you know, the online activism, there are the online pessimism, so to speak, which also reflects our own nature as human beings. You know, it takes a decision to either become an active participant of sharing a picture that exposes some kind of abuse on Facebook, or a news article, you know, like becoming informed into that, joining groups. But there's also people that say, you know, nothing can be changed. What's your perspective on that?
Yes, that would be actually a statement of laziness, or a statement of unwillingness to actually apply oneself to do something about it. Because it's much easier to say that, you know, nothing can be changed, nothing can be done about this, people will never change, which is actually a statement of I will never change. So it is to see this dichotomy, that what we project onto society is actually a projection of ourselves. So in order for things to change, of course, we must change, and we must change our participation within the system, and we must actually become active in, you know, getting to know what the world actually looks like, educate ourselves, basically, and educate ourselves on ways how we can make some impact, some substantial impact, instead of just, you know, saying, oh, nothing is going to change, I'll just go, you know, watch my series or whatever. That's the easiest way out.
Yeah, exactly. I would also agree that the apathy that we usually stand as, and this is also because we haven't made of politics part of our day-to-day living, you know, our social responsibilities, almost non-existent, and due to online activism, it's kind of like beginning to become part of us. Like, I've seen people from family, friends that before wouldn't be at all involved in for example, people losing their lands by the government, or some kind of contamination, or alternative agriculture. All of these topics weren't part of their realm. You know, it was only entertainment, parties, pictures, all of that. And now I've seen that there's more of an interaction with the people that post this type of images of taking care of resources, or exposing some kind of abuse at a political, social level. So there is a very cool movement that is being generated within this, and that it is definitely one's decision to either like or share. And so to break through from that pessimism, it simply requires to realize we live in this world, and even if we decide that something happening in Africa, or in some factory that makes our clothes in Thailand or Bangkok or else, doesn't affect us, we actually consume that. We are actually part of that whole chain. So we have to get involved one way or another. So let's move on to another aspect of this political online activism as well. I say political because there is also a dark side of it, which means when there is money coming from big corporations that tend to decide how this public opinion is created. So what's your perspective on this, and what can you tell us about it?
About how corporations influence the public opinion?
Yes.
Well, of course, all of the media have long since been manipulated by big money. I mean, as early as the 1900, all of the newspapers have been bought by the big money players like Rockefeller and company. So this has become a normal way of manipulating public opinion, even to the extent of people, Rockefeller for specifically, I think he hired Edward Bernays, who was Freud's nephew, in order to manipulate the public opinion. So this has been a big problem, but since internet has emerged, I think people have started seeing through this manipulation and also exposing it. So there's a lot of material on the internet now exposing that manipulation, and this is good. It's kind of slow because people still watch TV, and TV is like a big brainwash box that essentially hypnotizes people. But critically thinking individuals that are browsing the internet and are taking in information for themselves and then cross-referencing it and filtering it and looking at it with common sense are actually having now an impact through sharing their realizations about this. So I think it's only a matter of, it's a question of time before we completely see through this veil of deception and stop buying into it.
Absolutely, because that's also part of our education. I mean, I fully agree that when you are we've known of people that get to infiltrate groups like Occupy Wall Street and suddenly take the lead and suddenly lead that opposition or activist groups. It has happened throughout history several times. So, you know, what is the antidote toward that is to become commonsensical, to become informed in terms of really looking at where am I leading myself into this activist campaign, for example. Is it really something that will lead to a best for all outcome? Is it something that is beneficial at a long term? Is it realistic? All these aspects can be also part of the consideration, so that any influence from any corporation, any big money or donors or else can be also spotted right away. So it all goes back to ourselves. We don't have to really worry about these big corporations or the NSA or else, because what we also do in the Living Income as a movement, in essence a political awakening process and educational, is that we don't go against anyone in essence. We are rather proposing and here to establish an awareness on why our human rights are not guaranteed, and so coming through with the solutions. So our online presence is mostly dedicated to propose solutions, exposing the problem, yet at the same time coming through with the solution, which is also what I would suggest to anyone that is active online, to always focus on that, on the solutions, and looking at the very the root of and cause of the problem, which is mostly world system, structurally, economically, politically speaking, and not so much the outflow of it, which is what we are invaded with, a lot of information on campaigns and signing for this or that cause or else. So
yes,
what about this? Well, what examples do you have maybe of people that have gained presence online? For example, any politician or other person, or that you say, hey, that person has actually gotten somewhere because they were present online?
well, I would definitely say that Ron Paul, the American presidential candidate, has had a huge impact. And primarily because he doesn't work like other politicians. He actually, I don't know if he went rogue from the Republicans or not, I'm not sure about that one, but all of a sudden he started standing for social change. He started seeing that people are in dire situations, and he genuinely, at least to my perception, he genuinely started standing for social change. And this is something that instigated people then to follow him and to support him. So he gathered a massive amount of money just from online supporters, from people who are generally not interested in politics, because, you know, politics is left and right and Republicans and Democrats having their bickering in Parliament or whatever, Senate, and not coming up with any real substantial solutions to the most affected, to the most poor people in their country. They only, you know, follow big money. So Ron Paul kind of stood out, and therefore normal people like us, poor people actually, started supporting him. So that's a big discrepancy, I would say, a step away from the norm, which is really cool.
Yeah, in a way, there's also the discussion that offline politics are the effective ones and online politics is just not effective. But that proves that actually online politics can be even greater in terms of not being only at a national level, but of course we at you're in Slovenia, I'm in Mexico, and we get to know of Ron Paul and his doings and his webcasts that he does, and you get to know of him, of his ideas, because now we can access that information, which wasn't possible 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that much. So there is also this creation of global awareness, which is also a very cool and important aspect to see which politicians are standing up, which ones fall back. Like, for example, what happened with Elizabeth Warren, that before she was supporting the increasing of a minimum wage, which we were supporting, like, yes, that's awesome. But then she has to stick to a political agenda of supporting, for example, the attack from Israel to Gaza. So, yes, politicians can have their flaws, but what matters is also realizing the pros, the cool ideas that they have. And so take it from there, and us as a people then embody those as a new political movement, for example. We will also... Yeah, go ahead.
No. I just confirmed what you said. Sorry.
Cool. So we read an article that we will share with everyone watching the Hangout. It's from salon.com, and it talks about essentially why not much has changed throughout these 10 years of online activism, which is like the boom of social media as part of our everyday living. So in essence, it says that it should be as a conclusion that the purpose of democracy is not to simply, click a like or say, oh yes, I vote for that, but to channel all of these says, funnel them down into an actual agreement, which we would equate to, for example, what you're doing, a political proposal that can be implemented in reality. And so instead of also focusing on our differences or religious ideas or who's right, who's wrong, and this polarization in which we are already in, we have to use these tools such as internet, online activism as a way to find our common ground. So what's your perspective on this?
Yes. People still have a hard time coming to agreements. They have been exposed to all this data, and they some of them see the common sense in it, but we still have a problem agreeing. And not just on the internet. It is a thing that happens in day-to-day life. If you actually consider any kind of conversation between two people or more people, it's always about having your own opinion. It's always about expressing your own opinion, and for that you have to some extent, disagree with the person who talked before you. So this is, how would I put this? Like a defect that we have. We are kind of, yes, we are trying to make ourselves unique. We humans are, we think that we are all unique, that we are all like snowflakes. And that is to some extent true. I mean, but like snowflakes, we are also all made of the same substance. So we are more the same than we are different. But we still insist on, pointing out those differences so that we can keep our perceived unique personality. And for that we have to disagree then, and then we cannot unite, So a kind of a collective realization has to happen that, in order to come to a solution, we have to agree. And for that, we have to put our differences aside and start focusing on our sameness, on our similarities, and then we will come to an actual solution, to an agreement, to implement a change that will actually benefit all of us. So Absolutely. That is the main obstacle that we have to overcome. as human beings, as individuals, each and every one of us.
Exactly. No one is out of that type of mind frame we're in. It is really a shame that the discussion to create solutions mostly ends up in these endless debates. Like we were talking about last Hangout, how many people, instead of looking at the libertarian proposal for a basic income, people started questioning whether it was really a libertarian idea and so forth, which we will continue discussing next Hangout. But why can't we just focus on, hey, that's a good idea, that's actually a good plan, let's support it? And so leaving aside the ideologies, leaving aside the religious beliefs, the intellectualism aside, and focus on a common ground solution, which in this case, it's about money, it's about mathematics, it's about a real tangible economy, instead of making our ideologies our own religion and so fighting with each other, which leads nowhere, leads to further separation. So absolutely fully agree on that. And also what we have to look at is that the rule of the people doesn't have to be fearful of, you know, this type of big data companies or the NSA snooping, because a lot of activism or activists went into a bit of a fear about this. But what's your perspective on this as well?
Yeah. The NSA thing, I think it's completely ridiculous. I mean, how would I put this? You know, for them to monitor everyone, that would take about half of the Earth's population to monitor the other half of Earth's population. That's like silly in itself. But that fear of loss, that fear of being, you know, closed, going to prison for, you know, stepping up and saying something commonsensical and pointing out the abuse, that is actually what keeps us inactive. That is the thing that that we should overcome, because it's really ridiculous and it's keeping things at a status quo. So again, this is every individual's responsibility to overcome those fears and to simply go on with what they are doing, what they believe in, so to speak, what they are pursuing. If they are pursuing a world that is best for all, then there should be no question about their intentions being, you know, good. So from that perspective, they also cannot be compromised by any kind of NSA or FBI or whatever. You know, you're just standing for all of humanity. Come on. Also for those who are monitoring you. So what do you have to fear? Nothing.
Fully agree on that. And also, this is a cool statement to place into context that when you don't go against the system in itself, I mean, we don't require more fights, more violence, more antagonism, more wars, ultimately, against a system that we all created. So the past use of social media to create revolutions, like in Egypt, Tunisia, that has proven itself to be really ineffective. You can look at the countries right now, and it is really not like the best outcome. Rather, use these online tools to get together to create solutions, which then requires what Hilda was explaining. We require to get to a common ground and agreements, in essence. So that's what we have to work on. We have a question, Hilda, so I'm going to read it. It's from Stephen Charlton, and he's saying, I find most activists try to protest, so to speak, before finding out all the information on the subject. So what do you say about this?
Yes, this kind of emotional response is very common. I would say that the first thing to do when wanting to protest about something, although protesting seems to me stupid because it only creates more friction, but before protesting about a subject, it is really crucial to investigate the whole subject in the context of the whole world system and not just that one aspect. For instance, what you said about, you know, saving the rainforest, there's so many things to take into consideration here, like people's jobs, like people's families, like, you know, the agenda of the corporations that are doing it, and
And
it
what does the
all
saving
almost
actually
always
imply, right? Because we don't really know what they're going to be signing up for, like how it will really affect people, that solution. Maybe really we say, oh, you know, I sign up for this position of saving the rainforest, but what does it actually imply? What will they actually do? Are people agreeing with that
exactly.
solution, you know?
Yes, exactly. So it is to really critically investigate the point and to offer a solution, not to just go simply protest. No, I'm against this, but you know, offer a solution and then cross-reference it with other people and see if you can come to a common sense agreement, and
For
then
sure.
see if you can find some other way other than protesting and, you know, screaming at the politicians who are not there, you know, to see how this can be approached from a holistic level.
Yes, I would
Yeah.
also say that finding out all of the information on the subject, it is tracking the origin and cause of the problem, which is mostly asking where have we missed our responsibility, where have we abdicated our responsibility at a social level, that we have
Exactly.
allowed the outflow of this problem. So that's the real self-education process that we fully agree it is part of a real online activism, an informed decision, an informed individual that can understand the cause of the problem, leaves emotions aside, very, very important, and focuses on the actual mathematics, the actual factual situation, the facts, what is really tangible as an evidence of the problem, instead of going into an emotional upheaval or sense of unity through antagonizing and so forth. So thanks for your comment, Stephen. And if you have other
I would
questions, you
just
can
like to
also.
add one more thing,
Yeah,
if I
sure,
may.
for sure.
Also to implement that solution with oneself. Because, you know, what's the point of you going protesting against the destruction of the rainforest if you buy a new couch every year? I mean, people like to, it's, this is again how the system is only a reflection of every single individual. Because here in the developed world, we like to, you know, fall victim to commercials, to media's propaganda, and see our couch as obsolete or as not pretty anymore or whatever. And then we simply tuck it out, a perfectly good couch, just because it doesn't look like nice anymore, and get a new one. And we don't even think about how that affects the fucking rainforest. Sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to use that word.
It's fine.
How that affects the rainforest, and that we are actually personally responsible for the destruction of the rainforest that way. So it is to, you know, consider other solutions, like maybe have somebody uh, put a new fabric on your old couch, and then it will be looking nice again. Put some pillows on it, maybe, or whatever, and that's how you diminish your own impact on the rainforest.
Yeah, we
So
can
yeah,
talk
that's
about sustainability topics, and that is a whole topic in itself. So we might have a hangout on that, because there's tons to say on that subject, which really involves into why are we continuing to create this destruction and not really focusing on sustainability. So thanks for that comment. And let's move on to the conclusion process of this hangout, which is coming to see solutions. What would you say would be you know, certain considerations that could make online activism more effective or more approachable, and in essence, getting to as many people as it could? Or what has been also your experience on this?
well, in my experience, actually, there's been a lot of separate groups. You know, there is a lot of people who are for this cause or for that cause, and there's a lot of separation between these groups, who are not considering that this is all a global problem of money. Actually, it always boils down to money. So what would be best is for these people to actually connect and see that they all have a common goal. Whether it is animals, whether it is testing products on animals, whether it is the rainforest, whether it is poor people, it always boils down to money and the way how we as individuals participate in the system. So it is a double thing. It is to connect, to get together, and also to change ourselves to some extent, to realize that we are still the source of the problem, because the outside system is just a reflection of ourselves.
Yes, and many people would say, just clicking like or sharing a link does nothing. But for many people, this is the first approach of political engagement, social awareness. So even if we see it as, it is pointless, it won't make any change, it might not immediately, change the world, but it does start infiltrating this type of common sense quotes, pictures that expose abuse, blogs, for example. This blog as a hangout in itself is destined to be part of this online activism, wherein we start engaging more into conversations that really matter, that really consider that there is an awareness that we are missing, and that is of our own power to decide how to change things. So how does that begin? Well, through making your voice public, so creating leaders of public opinion, in essence, which are mostly paid people in the media, and we don't want to hear those again unless they actually focus on common sense. So we have to begin becoming like the alternative media or leaders of public opinion that focus on common sense, focus on solutions, and not so much getting people involved based on an ideology or religious or political affiliation, but simply basic living human rights. So what's your perspective on this?
What has been going through my mind right now when you were speaking was there's a lot of liking, there's a lot of clicking on the like, but in recent years I have actually noticed, and a friend of mine on Facebook pointed this out, that there's a lot more of clicking like than actually commenting. So it's like the communication between people is diminishing, which is not so good. So the thing would be to comment and to actually interact, and to even stop clicking like, because, no, well, not stop, but only clicking like will cause Facebook to give you a whole spam of commercials and related links and what else you can, entertain yourself with, and immediately forget about the subject that you just liked. Instead of just liking, I think this communication is very important, because this is how you actually discover who is in the same mindset as you, who is actually aware of problems, who is wanting to contribute. This is how you can connect with people. And yeah, I think we should start talking more.
Exactly, and also not get divided by, for example, we propose a living income and people from the basic income would see us as a counter group. Not at all. We are working toward the same goal, so it's best if we can start talking to each other and interconnect, which we do. And we do friend people that are supporting, for example, the basic income proposal, the BN network. All of these are simply different groups and organizations that may have different foundations, but in the end, it's for the betterment of everyone's life. So we have to really stop kind of getting divided and conquered once again, and simply focus on that common ground. As a last point, Hilda, and I know that you're very interested in sharing this, in terms of being aware of the Photoshop realities or trollism on internet when sharing this type of online activism, what's your perspective on that?
Yes, this is very interesting. In the last few years, again, it has emerged. A lot of disinformation, misinformation is going on the internet, which people put out, just for the fun of it. I guess in some way to want to have an influence. It's really not constructive. It's not productive. It's actually very harmful, because we as people, as human beings, we are used to believing everything we read, This is how brainwashing has, for eons of time, for the past century, has been working, because we believed everything we saw on TV, we believed everything we read in the newspaper. So we have this tendency to believe everything that we see, and if we see on the internet, for instance, a black lion, we will immediately believe that now this exists, although we've never heard of it before in TV or on TV or in newspapers. So I fell victim to this a few times, where I wanted to believe or believed something that I saw, although it seemed completely impossible. And this is also a consequence of being exposed to large amounts of data and finding out things that are true and seem, baffling. So it's kind of hard to filter the truth from the lies. So it's really important when we see something that is unbelievable or amazing to not just believe immediately that it's true, but to cross-reference it and to Google it, to check other sites if this is actually true or if it is a hoax, because there's been many hoaxes going around lately. This predates internet time, of course. There was this woman who made a social experiment for her magister degree, I think. She was an anthropologist, and she wanted to research urban legends. So she made up this urban legend that a human eats about 7 spiders in a year during sleep. And people completely latched onto this. So this shows this tendency of people to believe something that they have absolutely no proof of. So yeah, I think critical thinking and critical research of almost everything is necessary.
Absolutely.
So personal responsibility.
Yeah. Exactly, and to not latch on to what sounds interesting or what sounds provoking or thought-provoking or anything, because this is also part of what you will be advocating as an individual. So if one stands up for a cause, for example, or within a group, to really make sure what that group is standing for, who is funding it, who is setting up the rules, what is their purpose. So really get the documentation in place and the sources of the information so that we do make informed decisions, and so educate each other, but based on facts, based on things that we can commonsensically see and agree with, instead of just following an entire maybe propaganda setup for another movement or activism online. So exactly. Any last words, Hilda, for the closure of this hangout?
No. I think we've covered it.
Yes, I would also suggest to anyone, realizing that the real engagement happening after the clicktivism is, in fact, in our own lives as individuals, because we do create this awareness and this platform of education and conversation such as these hangouts, but obviously the actual purpose and outcome of all of this is essentially political awareness, yes, but also taking it to the ground at a local level, wherein this proposal can be implemented at a political level. So you can read our proposal. That's what we stand for. That's why we make all of these discussions. The living income guarantee proposal, the links will be in the information section of this video. And so if you agree with what we've shared, then join us, because as we're saying, we have to come to an agreement and a common ground where we can all agree that, yes, we're required to sort the problem out at a political, economic level. And so, supporting each other at a social level with better education, creating topics of awareness, and sparking up this interest in topics that before were only left in the hands of a few. So let's use the internet in a supportive manner now that it's here, and let's, use it to shout out and stand up and also make ourselves known that we stand up for a solution. So thanks a lot, Hilda, for being here, for your time.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And to everyone watching, next week we will be continuing the discussion on the libertarian proposal for a basic income, along with other recent developments on the basic income ground. And so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye.
Bye.